Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there, and welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dili Hussein. Before I introduce today's guests, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Today's guests come as a pair, and this episode is actually long overdue. We had to reschedule and postpone a few times, but alhamdulillah, we've made it happen. They are the 2 British Muslim gentlemen, influencers that you would have seen, who have received millions of views on their platforms, and that's none other than brother Chris and Ben. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Sir, how are we doing?
I'm very well. And I feel like I should have dressed for the occasion.
Yes, we've made a couple of comments before off camera. But,
it's all about diversity.
Yes, exactly.
There's a whole conversation about DEIs and all of that now. But I did say that the setting of the Blood Brothers podcast is it's very appropriate for you guys and your brand.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Must be your front room.
Well, you've put in effort, clearly, because we didn't put in effort when we did a podcast for our guests, did we? I mean, what would we do if we had, people from different backgrounds? Taj Mahal, maybe?
Oh, God, that's a bit too exotic, that one is.
Let the offending begin.
How often do you guys wear suits, or is it just for work and content and stuff?
Well, I sleep in mine.
Look, my pyjamas are my suits, especially with the ties. Well, it depends how I'm feeling, to be honest. If it's a Sunday, sometimes I wear a black one. But, no, to be honest, I do like to wear my thobe sometimes.
Oh, you do wear a thobe?
Yes, yeah, I have to admit that.
Okay.
And I have a wonderful potato bags thobe kind of thing.
Wicked.
And I just love it. It was like on the floor in a shop, and I just bought it for like £10 from a Syrian. And as much to my mum's displeasure, that's what I wear around the house. Just like, can't you just wear some pajamas or a football shirt or something?
Yeah, I introduced you to it, didn't I? Because I said, if you wear this, you will feel like nothing.
Detachment from this world, and that's how it feels. Yeah, at the 15th of Shaban, like I wore it, and put a few nasheeds on, had my prayer beads, and I was just
fully vibing.
Yeah, and I have proper vibing moments.
Can you not do that in a suit?
Well, as we've discussed, when you got the belly sort of thing, you got to push that in there, but you should let all this flop out, don't you? Like a potato.
Speak for yourself.
Chris, when was the last time you wore a tracksuit?
Oh, God. Maybe 13.
13?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you know what? I do wear a tracksuit to the gym.
Okay.
But I put my hood up.
Okay.
Just in case anybody sees me.
He's only been to the gym once, though, isn't he?
Yeah, and there's only one ethnic minority in my gym, so I don't think...
very much. Let me ask you guys a few quick fires, just to get to flesh out some of the taste and flavour for the viewers, for the type of podcast that lays ahead for them. If I were to ask you, Chris, are you more of a football or cricket man?
Football.
What team?
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Ben, EastEnders or Coronation Street?
I prefer Married at First Sight.
Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
Good.
The Australian version.
The Australian version.
Yes.
I like it down under.
Yes.
So that means you wouldn't have been a big fan of Cilla Black's Blind Date? I would have been a bit too...
I think I'm a bit too young for that. I'm still a bit of a whippersnapper, unlike some. Isn't that right, or being?
That's what you claim.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not very English.
Well, coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
Fair enough. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Earl's Grey or Yorkshire tea?
Tetley's.
Tetley's. Do they call that prison tea, yeah?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that suits him down to the ground.
I'm a bit of a scandal at times.
Digestives or rich tea biscuits?
Digestives. Chocolate on top.
Okay. Ant or deck?
Ooh.
I think both.
Yeah, both.
We get called the Muslim ant and deck.
Yeah? That's
I
right.
like that, actually, yeah.
If you had to go to a holiday destination, a Spanish island or a Greek island?
Well, you were talking about Benidorm the other day, weren't you, Chris?
That's bloody typical, isn't it? It's not.
Well, hang on a minute. Spanish island as in like Ibiza, or Spanish island as in Lanzarote?
Either or?
Lanzarote, yeah, 100%.
Yeah?
Volcanic.
You seem more of a nine-napper man to me.
Yes, probably.
Spiders have got that. Would you define yourself as British first or English first? What do you lean towards more?
British.
British. Yourself?
Yeah, British. I think it's a bit more, inclusive of like the Scots and the Welsh, and we can't forget them, can we?
And plus, throughout the ages, you do a DNA test, would have all mixed anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't say you really English.
Yeah, because if you're English, it's the land of the Angles, isn't it? And I know that I've got a bit of Welsh, a bit of Greek,
Probably
a bit of
Norman, French,
Norman, Chinese,
Scots, Gaelic.
Polish.
So Gaelic, Celts, the Anglo-Saxons. What about the Britannica folk, the Britons? They were more towards Wales. No, forgive me. Britons were different to Anglo-Saxons. Am I correct? Am I not?
Well, from what I've heard is that, so you know Brittany in France?
Yeah.
They're a sort of Breton, like Gaelic people, the same as the Welsh and the Irish.
Okay.
And from what I know, the Britons were pushed back into Wales. I wonder if my history...
So
teacher
are
watched
you
this, but
insisting that the Welsh are the true English people?
I'm actually going to say that, yeah, I'm going to put that out there.
But they're all intermixed.
Oh, yeah, because you've got the Picts in Scotland as well, and we don't really hear about them, do we?
No.
Last one. When you came to Islam, when you guys became Muslim, what were you more exposed to, Sufism or Salafism?
Initially, I would say a kind of like Sufism, and then I veered away from it and became indoctrinated by a very extreme kind of ideology of supposed Salafism. And then left it. Yeah, I'm not myself.
That's a big question because I don't want to go into... I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, but I'd say initially, yeah, Sufism, and then, yeah, so-called Salafism, and then back again.
Well,
reverse, yeah.
This now takes us on to where we get to know you both a bit more. How long have you guys been friends?
Since
we
I
friends
bought a
just
burger from him at the burger fair.
I thought it was a kebab.
Since we met at university.
University.
He was seemed like a troubled non-Muslim, interested in Islam, but not interested in Islam.
Were you Muslim at the time?
I was, but he didn't know that.
Ah.
It's a spicy story, isn't it?
It is.
I want to hear it.
Do you know what's interesting? This is the most interesting point I found about that point of the story, is that he had a question about Islam, and he went to go and ask an Asian sister.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, go and ask Christopher about Islam." And she said, and he said, "Oh, why would I do that?"
Yeah, he's a conservative Etonian old boy. Watch.
And she didn't she say, "Oh, he's a sheikh." He's a sheikh.
She said he's a sheikh.
And then he turned up and... Well,
What university was this?
Leeds.
Not Beckett.
But before that, what happened in the classroom?
So I was studying Middle Eastern studies. Again, that's a good story as well. And the old Bean was studying Arabic and politics. And we shared a module called Arabic Media. And there was only about 10 of us in the classroom. And and as a subculture, I was a mod and like into like, you know, football casuals, you know, that kind of thing. Stone Island, Alina was saying, yeah.
Told you not to wear.
And I walked in and, you know, I was like, oh, hello. Christopher walks in a shirt and tie in like a wonderful Mac. And I'm like, blimey, he smells good and looks all right. I mean, he must be a...
That sounds dodgy, doesn't it?
Not in a dodgy way. And I turned around, I mean, you know, with the classic Icebreakers, oh, you know, I'm Ben, I do this and everything.
So you're telling me Chris was dressing similar to this even back...
This people often say this, like, is it a mimic? Like, are you know, taking the mick? Is it exaggerated? No, he's a posh bugger.
I know, I'm just commoner like everybody else.
A posh parking attendant, as he said before. But I turned around and said to him, are you a mod? Because he was wearing a shirt and tie, and I'd only really seen mods wearing that kind of thing, you know, like Paul Weller and everything, you know, in public. And he was like, no. And then I asked him, where are you from? And he was like, I'm from Nottingham. And I was like, no, you're not, pal. No, you're not.
So where's your hometown?
Nottingham.
So you're both Nottingham lads?
Yes.
I mean, I still don't believe it, but he's more of a Shire person, you know, the countryside. Yes. The rolling hills.
Is the bus stops and the scallywags.
Yes. And the chicken boxes.
So what was he like, your project conversion? What happened?
Mine.
No, meaning like when you saw him as the non-Muslim who's curious.
Yeah. Initially, I wasn't bothered about him when he asked me about if I was a mod. So, no, don't be silly. Turn around and pay attention. But later on, it was when you had asked that Asian sister.
Wait, hold on. But let's backtrack a moment. He needed help with his Arabic media exam.
That came later. Don't be so ridiculous.
So I'd fallen out with a housemate, and again, like, I'm sure we'll talk about it more in depth in a bit. But I wanted to understand like Islam's perspective on forgiveness. And I'd become friends with this, I believe she was a Pakistani sister. And she was like, yeah, you know, talk to Christopher. And at that time, I knew converts existed, but I thought as a convert, you have to change your nationality and become an Arab or a Pakistani and have to wear a thobe and have a really big beard and enjoy biryani more than anything. And, you know, when she said, ask Christopher, I was just so shocked.
Which linguistically means follower of Christ.
Yeah. And I could, honestly, wallah, I couldn't fathom it. I really couldn't. I didn't think it could be possible because I thought he was more British than me, you know, as I'm wearing my Adidas, you know, German traders and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for you well.
And yeah, it's been quite a journey. And
it was
yeah,
that
it
the
just blew
project
my
was
mind,
basically feed him good food, don't allow him to pay,
Lam
speak to
Kuze,
him,
yeah.
find out what his problems are, comfort him, and show him the beauty of Islam in a way that can help him personally without all the politics and all of that rubbish.
How long did that project take until he took his Shahada?
Well, initially you were interested in more the cultural stuff. You were interested in Arabs. You were interested in like Latin people. You were interested in linguistics and culture. And I could see that, and I was afraid that, you know, if you'd go down that path of being interested in Arabs and then want to be an Arab as opposed to being a Muslim. And that's fine in the beginning, because at the end of the day, I want you to become a Muslim. You know, we love good for others.
Sahih.
So, I think it was about a year, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we met in second year.
Yeah.
And then...
It was the final year. And, so I tell the story, because I've heard it that many times.
Yeah, go on then.
So he met one of my friends called Islam, and he showed him about the seas that don't meet.
Okay.
And that was an undeniable truth for him, that how could I deny this reality? And he must embrace Islam. So he went outside in front of a pub. Was it the Leeds? Which pub was it?
The Hyde Park pub, I think.
Yeah, where there were so many students outside in crocodile outfits and stuff like that. And he had said the Shahada with a woman...
sister from Mecca.
Yeah, sister from
Wow.
Mecca. And then he fell to the ground, crying. Apparently it wasn't because of his dissertation. And then he called me, or somebody called me, and I came down in my Chevrolet at the time. I have a Chevrolet as a student.
Wow.
Tapping the horn, just like somebody got married.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought I got married.
Then we went out and we had shawarma, and we played snooker.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. SubhanAllah.
It's weird hearing him say it because I think I've said it so many times.
So did you purposely go and take the kalima outside a pub?
No, so like
Was it?
thing is, I don't even know where we've, because we've sort of gone from here to here. Like, so there was like a 24/7 sort of like
University
library. Yeah.
It was opposite.
And it was in a room full of Egyptians, and my dissertation was about Muhammad Salah, who you know was doing really well for Liverpool, and he was, every time when he was celebrating a goal, he was, you know, doing the sujood, and I was making the argument that academically and sociologically that him being visually Muslim is now being portrayed in the press as something positive. And like with the Liverpool fans, like singing songs on the terraces in their stonies and etc., being drunk, you know, singing about wanting to convert to Islam, and that you know, Muhammad Salah is his Islamic, you know, identity as being positive for once. So obviously these Egyptians were in this place and seeing this Brit who was wearing Stone Island, etc. So why is he speaking positively about an Egyptian Muslim, you know? And obviously, as we know, with the majority of Arabs, they do like staying up late, don't they? So, you know, this was about 3 a.m. And it just so happened there was a pub opposite and a shawarma place as well. Because before the Shahada was taken, I did have... It's all about food, isn't it, actually, Christopher, like sometimes?
Well, the Jews say that the way to a man's heart is through his bed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other ways, but definitely that's definitely...
Oh, yeah.
Chris, your journey to Islam, when did you become Muslim and how did that come about?
When I was 14, I suppose, I went to Church of England school, so you had to go to this supposed act of worship every day, and you do the happy clappy thing, and they read passages from the Bible and stuff like that, and try and relate it to people's lives. And everybody took it as a joke, well, most people did anyway, including myself. And one day I decided to not take it as a joke and to really think about and reflect what they're saying and what they're talking about, and does it really make sense? And then I used to ride my bike to school. It was the best bike ever. Nobody had a better bike than me.
Oh, I should be telling this story, not you.
Why?
Well, because
You guys like telling each other stories.
Yeah. Go on.
You have to do the Trump impression if you do.
Okay,
The
fine.
best bike ever.
The best bike ever. Absolutely beautiful.
Nobody had a better bike than me. It was
Absolutely.
the best bike. And it was my baby. And I even used to pretend, this is weird, I used to even pretend that it had a noise when I locked it. I used to get my key and beep, beep.
That's some serious commitment.
It was. So I was on the way, and I remember just about to park up and lock it up. And my friend Wesley said to me, "Christopher, can I ride your bike?" He used to love bikes. "Yeah, ride your bike." I said, "No, it's my baby. You're not going to ride it." No, please, let me ride it. Wesley, you want to ride my bike? You're in the same house as me. You know, in certain schools you have houses. So he's in the same house as me. And I said, "Wesley, if you want to ride my bike, you can. But if you break it, you pay for it." And off he went into the sunrise at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was walking down this path towards this act of worship. And I remember suddenly something coming down into my brain, into my mind, and thinking, God is God and man is man. And they cannot be one and the same. The definitions contradict each other. It's illogical for them both to be the same thing. There has to be a God, there has to be a creator. This universe is so complex, and there has to be messages that are sent to deliver this message.
And you are how old, Chris?
14.
Wow.
And that, at that moment, I believe that was the hidayah, that was the guidance, that was the planting of the seed inside the mind, the opening, the key that unlocks. And it was, wow, this is the reality, this is the truth. And as I continued walking down the path, I probably said hello to a few people, went inside, and then really listened to what they were saying. And I went back home and started doing a bit of research on, what was it called? Google Video, before YouTube was out, Google Video.
Shows his age, doesn't it?
And doing a bit of looking at blogs and stuff like that. And I remember particularly Ahmed Deedat.
Legend. Right.
Yeah, he was around at that time, and he was the one out, because there wasn't that many Muslim influences.
He was the legend.
He was
of
at
his
the
time. Forefront
of comparative politics.
Yeah, single-handedly.
Yeah.
Mashallah.
So I remember looking into him and watching him kind of like religiously, so to speak. And then from that would be the natural progression would be Zakir Naik.
Yes.
And I remember then watching him, and I remember then going down to the Muslim areas and saying, "Do you have any DVDs of Zakir Naik?" And I purchased about 5 or 6 copies, and went home and started watching them on the DVD player.
When did you take the Shahada? When did you officially become Muslim?
Well, I started making notes from Zakir Naik and Ahmed Deedat and going to school and debating fellow Christians. And I was saying, this is wrong, and this is Islam is the truth. And they would always come back to me and say, well, if Islam's the truth,
Why haven't you become Muslim?
yeah, why have you not become Muslim? Why are you a Christian? Are you a Christian debating and fighting for Islam?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So a Christian lad is absorbing and consuming Muslimic literature from Ahmed Deedat, rahimahullah, and Dr. Zakir Naik, coming back, debating his fellow Christians for the camp of Muslims.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I thought about it. I thought, bloody hell, I better crack on. So one night I went home, and I remember searching on, I think it was Yahoo at the time, how do you become a Muslim? And I wasn't finding the answer clearly. And I remember going to MSN Messenger. And, remember you can nudge people on MS. Yes, I was nudging all the Asians. Right. Right, how do you become a Muslim? How do you become a Muslim? And nobody really, I was quite shocked because most people know this thing. But nobody really gave a true answer. And somebody said, oh, you can come to my mosque next Friday, and you can come to my Islamic center next Thursday. And I thought, why would I want to wait? What if I died? At this point in time, when somebody is so interested in Islam and so passionate and wanting to be a Muslim, they're like somebody who has just passed their test. They want to drive everywhere, go and pick up their friends. They don't want to sit at home or catch the bus.
100%.
So it was, I want to be a Muslim now. Anything in between could be fatal. And then I remember kind of doing something like this towards the sky and thinking, oh, God, guide me, please, I want to be a Muslim. And then somebody told me, this is what you say. And I said it, and I remember in the darkness of my room, on the floor, the toxins leaving my body, and the tension and the stress leaving. It's a physical. It's not just a spiritual and mental thing. It really is a physical thing in the sense that it's draining these toxins, the toxins of disbelief and hatred and envy and jealousy, all leaving you and bringing you back to that pure kind of like fitra.
And you experienced that at the age of
14 and a half.
Wow, that's pretty intense for someone who's 14 and a half. 14 and a half lads would be doing a bazillion other things than that. SubhanAllah, that is pretty powerful. Did you share it with your family?
No, I just grew a beard. Could do that at 14 and a half.
When did the family find out? Did you have siblings?
No, they said, oh, hang on a minute, that beard looks a bit Islamic. I said, yes, it is. And they said, oh, right, okay. And then they just kind of sat back and watched. Let's see where this is going.
Okay.
It might be a bit of a phase.
Yeah.
And I actually had a Muslim neighbor at the time, and I was scared to speak to him. So I decided when going on my morning jog, I would say salam and run away and continue the jog. Hopefully by the time I come back on I'd built up that courage to then say, how are you? And I did. And he was gardening. Yeah, so.
Did you say walaikum salam?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And
I think it was more the alaikum salam.
Yeah, okay.
What was that?
So growing up, and the same question will be coming to you, Ben. Growing up, were you exposed to Muslims who were non-white? Because most cases than not, Muslims would be non-white. Were you exposed to them growing up? You said you had a neighbour.
Yeah.
Did you have any children?
Yes.
Did you ever vibe with them, get on with them?
After being a Muslim, yes. Not before.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Why was that? Did they make an effort?
I think it was just within our mentality and thinking that we don't, outside of institutions like schools, universities and workplaces, we don't mix. We have nothing in common. We're not really interested in their food, their language, their culture. They're not interested in our food, language and culture. And we have different ways of life and not really interested. And I used to find, this is serious, I used to find Asians annoying as a non-Muslim.
Go on, how?
Because I just used to see them and I just used to think, like, why are you dressing like that? Why does the street smell? Why on, these Milad processions?
Yeah.
Why are you blocking this? I didn't know what it was at the time. Why are you blocking the streets, chanting in a foreign language, and we're just trying to get to wherever we're trying to get to? Why are always the Muslim areas dirty and filthy and takeaways everywhere, and you can't look after anything? You can't plant nice flowers and roses. Why is it like this?
Do you still feel like that?
The latter part, yeah. We have a campaign that we're thinking of starting that to make all the Muslim areas in the UK the nicest, most beautiful areas.
Yeah, welcoming.
Okay, so I'm glad because we've kind of like quickly got into the whole kind of culture conversation about it. But before we do go on to those wider aspects of what we're going to talk about, I do want to know about the reactions of your respective families when you became Muslim. So yours was, the beard looks a bit Muslimic. Let's see where this goes. It might be a phase. So when was there an official time when your parents knew, or when you
when I became an extremist.
Okay, so that's when you adopted what you thought at the time was a particular strand of Salafism.
Yeah, you could have the ultimate extreme of it.
Ben, yourself, when did the family first find out?
When my mum read The Guardian.
Were you featured in a Guardian article?
Yeah. I told the nation that I became Muslim instead of my family first, and Jeremy Vine, because I did for part of my research, I interviewed an editor of the Muslim Vibe, and I told him about that I'd become a Muslim, and he was like, "Oh, let's do a little podcast about it." And then a freelance journalist listened to it, and he said, "Oh, do you want to tell your story?" But my mum was more was more bothered about the story that I told in the article about this Liverpool fan that had broken his nose chasing after Mohammed Salah to get his shirt. She was more bothered about that than I'd become a Muslim. But like I said, like my journey was all like this, so I wasn't practicing. Then I started to question it. I'd say I fell out of Islam until Ramadan came along, like about 3 years later after taking my initial shahada, And I told them I'm going to be fasting. And then I started praying. And then I started going to a man's house that sounded foreign. And then they were like, you're going back to it, aren't you? And then there was a lot of sort of like tension. But then I think they've sort of gotten used to it now. Especially that I just buy gifts, not just for the sake, for the sake of God, that's what we're encouraged to do.
So as we speak, both of you guys have good relations with non-Muslim family members?
I think they love me more than ever.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
It was after leaving that extremism that my mother said to me, you become a human being again. And that's when the relationship changed. And it took, I think, about 3 years to fix those 6 months.
How long was that phase?
About 6 months. Yeah, and it damaged that relationship.
And without necessarily going into details, was it like, were you like a takfiri, or were you like someone who just saw everyone as a deviant? What strand of that type of thinking was it that you adopted?
I would suppose, I would say that, most of the people that claim to be Muslim aren't Muslim.
Okay.
That takfiri kind of thing. And then also, most people follow culture, they don't follow religion.
Okay.
We need to kind of like, I even remember somebody had even said that had it not been for the UK law putting me in prison, I would go out and start chopping people's heads off.
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, that didn't last long.
Yes.
Like, you wouldn't be in a suit now, would you?
No, I would not.
So look, when I reached out to both yourselves, and I explained my reasons for wanting this engagement, so many things have happened in the last year, more so since the last rescheduling that we had. Like when Chris sent me the proposed topics of discussion from last time, barely anything changed.
No.
But we've had 15 months of pro-Palestine protests, hundreds and thousands of people, many non-Muslims, many white non-Muslims coming out, leading these protests. We've had a general election where Muslims mobilized around the Gaza genocide. There was the whole Muslim vote campaign. We had the tragic and horrific incident of Southport. We had the misinformation, disinformation campaign that took place on X, which then led to a week of mindless riots. We see 5 Reform MPs currently in the House of Parliament, Reform in many polls, currently either neck and neck or ahead of Labour. We're seeing Europe shift to the right, AfD in Germany, National Front in France, Trump back, all of that back. All of this has happened in the last 12 to 15 months. So, and all of it is centered around, let's put aside the rights and wrongs of it, things to do with identity or the loss of it for many white Westerners. DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion, hiring and employment. Integration via assimilation. Immigration and mass immigration. A lot of this stuff that's been happening, I've just mentioned, is centered around that. So there's lots for us to go through. And I think it's important that our viewers and listeners got to understand you both a little bit before we start having that conversation. So let me start by first asking you guys, you, Chris, do you believe there is a clash or an opposition or a tension or a foundational difference between what is meant or seen or understood as British and being a Muslim?
Yes.
There is.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask you both is because you are the 2 British Muslim gentlemen. Your aesthetics, your brand is distinctly what many would understand to be posh white British. Yeah. What do you think those clashes are? And is it entirely in opposition, or are there some overlaps in terms of what is meant by being British and what is supposed to be a Muslim? And for our viewers and listeners, the previous Conservative government described being British as belief in democracy, individual liberty, mutual tolerance and the rule of law. That's fundamental British values as defined by the previous Conservative government, but that could mean bazillion different things to many people. So what are the differences? What are the similarities, if any, Chris?
Oh, blimey. This is... what's interesting is you touched upon the impact and perception of what is being English or let's say British, and what is being a Muslim. And these two camps are confused on, I think, sometimes on what they should be and what the other one should be.
So,
I.e., an English person thinks that a Muslim should be a certain way and he's not, and a Muslim thinks that an English person should be a certain way and he's not. And the Muslim thinks he should be a certain way and is not, and the Englishman thinks he should be a certain way and is not. So you've got so many overlaps here, and it begins with, I suppose, there's so many other things with class involved as well. For example, like I've really struggled to relate to, let's say, somebody that a white young male born in Bradford that I want to talk to him about Islam or anything for that matter. If I want to give him even career advice, he's going to struggle to relate to me and I'm going to struggle to relate to him. Ben does a better job at that, and you know, I take my hat off to him for that. But I really struggle with that.
so socioeconomics is important.
Socioeconomic background is really important. Identity is also involved in terms of your culture, because, for example, on the weekend, we might go walking in the country, whereas a young boy from Bradford, he might go and meet his friends and go to the local chicken shop and never ever want to go walking in the country. So there's so much culture involved in it, and the Muslim community have so many opinions and ideas on what it means to be an actual true Muslim. But I guess where we come in is that we want to break the imagery and stereotypes of what it really truly means
Be
to
that
be a
bridge,
Muslim,
isn't it, across the
and
river?
to be that bridge so they can cross that river, like you said, and to show the British people that you don't have to look like that to be a Muslim, and also for the Muslim to be seen as you don't have to look like that to be British.
Absolutely.
So it's really that fusion between the two. But there is a clash.
Where's the clash?
And the clash is in the values and morals. And the problem is that they ask this question so many times, umpteen times, about does Islam, British values and Islam, you know, do they coincide? But the problem is, if you change British values all the time, how can we ever keep up? We have something that's fixed, that is beyond the what's it called, the sub.
Talking about British values or Islamic values, because British values can change from time to time, because
That's the problem.
yeah, I mean, since the dawn of secular liberalism, moral goalposts constantly shift.
Subjective. That was the word.
It's subjective. Homosexuality was seen in a particular way 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's now seen in a very different light.
Yeah.
And there's even laws that now protect certain things that those protections weren't there. And there were certain things which were criminalized then, which are now openly and freely done. So with ever shifting changes in British values, are you saying that there could be a kind of staple constant, which is British values?
Well, they should be if they have morality. That's the problem. It's the lacking of the moral compass. And if throughout time, if you have, for example, if these are Muslim values, if you've got Muslim values here, and you've got kind of British values here, they might intertwine, and then kind of like separate, and then intertwine again, and then throughout time, kind of since in time immemorial, I suppose. But that overlap, it depends on which time you're living. Like you said, homosexuality, for example, would have, quote unquote, you know, agreed with some principles of Islamic interpretation 40 years ago. But now it's a complete polar opposite. And because they're lacking that moral compass, because it's all based upon subjective opinions of, I think the law
freedom of the individual
should be this in Britain. I think the law should be this, and we're going to vote on it on parliamentary democracy based upon our opinions, whereas we have a moral compass that guides us. How can you ever? It's only going to intertwine over times, but never a constant parallel.
And even then, it's by chance and not even design.
Yes.
Ben, how much of Britishness do you think is linked to Christianity? And I say this to you because I was having a debate on X the other day. Sometimes I put out provocatively worded questions for my white fellow citizens to reflect upon. And by the way, this is my take. I don't know what you guys think of this. Muslims are my ummah. They are my ummah, meaning on the basis of faith and brotherhood, they're my Muslim ummah. The people who I am raised amongst, and in this case, the white indigenous Brits, they are my qawm. They are my people. whether they want to see me as not, I don't care. Or whether I see them entirely as X or Y, doesn't matter. I've been raised in this land around them, around their cultural norms, resisted there, assimilated there, accepted there. You are my qawm. In the same way that Lut was, he had his qawm, Ibrahim had his qawm, all the prophets had their qawms. Sometimes they were loved and respected by their people, other times they were detested by their people. How much of Christianity do you think influences what Britishness means? Because on the one hand, you can be argued Britain is a Christian country because of Church of England, the monarch, constitutional monarchy, so forth.
I just say symbolically.
So symbolically. So there's that argument.
I mean, I don't think there's even an argument about it. Like, if we look at the latest census, Christianity is
less than 50%.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so by default, this is no longer a Christian country. You know, I know that's going to upset some of the pause and the barriers, but that's a fact.
Institutionally,
And-
it is those things.
Symbolically, institutionally, yes, but we speak to the people. You know, we talk about people power, what the people think. You know, we live in a democracy and everything like this. Why isn't the Adhan being recited, 5 times a day here?
But one would
What
argue.
church bells are.
Okay, but
That's
hold
the
on.
point he made before.
But one would argue. Hold on, Ben.
I'm strapping in for this one.
No, because it's what we spoke about off camera. Imagine if there was roles were reversed and we started seeing, I don't like using this term, but a demographically foreign language or culture. I say demographically purely on the basis of numbers and presence, right? Britain, irrespective of whether it's ceremonially Christian or not, institutions, its laws, it still has, it very much is worded. The aesthetics of it is still very much Christian. Its heritage, its culture, its identity, its feelings, its nostalgia, it's very much Christian. Its morality, not too long ago, was Christian.
Oh, yeah.
Victorian. If you were to, I've asked many from the far right and the right from this. I said, when was how far back do you think Britain had a Christian society? And they always say the Victorian period was the last time that Britain had a kind of moral Christian outlook in society and policing people's behaviours and so forth.
I'd say it was during the war, after the war. I remember my granddad saying to me, it all went to pot during the 60s, with the, marijuana and the like, and like the hippie movements and all these sort of things. And I think that came from, like the black and white dystopian notion of war-torn Britain, from the Blitz and everything. And they wanted colour, they wanted freedom, so to speak. And when I've spoken to those of the older generation, the war generation, they always say that they had the choice of 2 Macs, blue or grey, or like 2 pairs of trousers. And all of a sudden, we can have different pairs of trousers, different coloured trousers. I mean, I'm wearing red socks, he's wearing blue socks, and I can't see your socks. But we've got, exactly, but we've got such a choice. But it's that freedom of choice, isn't it? But before, it was sort of set that this is what you do. And for example, on a Sunday, you go to your grandma's house, have Sunday dinner and all these kind of things, during whatever time the raspberries and the blueberries come out, you go picking and all those sort of things. And I think that started to deteriorate after the war, like we said, with
Are you
the freedom
blaming
of
America?
I am. Well, what is it? The British invasion. And then, the dynamics of Britain started to change after the war, with migration coming in, in a good way as well. And the notion of being British has become very different.
Thank you.
I like it. I needed to wet my whistle.
Kind of you.
But my granddad, who, he says that he doesn't believe in anything. But when he was brought up during that period, so 30s, 40s, 50s, he went to church every Sunday. He knows about, the Old Testament and all the Bible stories and the like and everything, and it was cultured.
I suppose that was my grandmother about the trousers.
Yeah, and my nan, or I'd say my parents' generation, they still had that core family value. Wanted to get married at the age of 18, 19, have 3, 5 children or whatever. Now I think that institution, that British institution, I would say, that has sort of dissolved over time. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up for debate.
No. Let's debate it then. I think it's a bad thing.
I think it's a bad thing.
Because what we have seen and what data tells us is that there are more pet dogs in British households and children under 12.
I'm not.
The white British birth rate is 1.2. To have a stable population is 2.1. Divorce, people are barely getting married. When they do, those marriages aren't lasting. What we have seen is...
Are people getting married though now? I know people that are living with their partners.
I'm saying we've seen
when they do.
When
And they do everything back to front. They have the house, they have the kid. Oh, we might as well get married now.
So what I'm saying is that all the traditional institutions, which is like the bedrock of society, the family, marriage, parenthood, all of these things are seemingly decaying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what is to blame? Because we can have an ideological conversation about
Americans.
this was neoliberalism, this was the dawn of American hegemony, Pax Americana, capitalist way of life and secular liberalism, all that kind of stuff. But there still has to be some level of self-accountability, gents, surely. Like as Muslims, we can, I hope that Muslims can introspectively how from a civilizational point of view, their decline was inevitable. Why things weren't hunky-dory for certain periods of our history. I hope people can be self-reflective like that. But white Westerners in the same breath have to take some accountability in that where did it all start? Where did it go pear-shaped? And how did it happen so quick? How did it go from where in the 1950s and 60s there were still traditional institutions, there were still families, people were still getting married and having children, and now where these things are nearly seen as a burden?
Do you know the Beano?
The Beano?
The Beano and the Dandy.
Of course I know.
Yeah, classic comics. I'm a bit of a collector.
Standard.
Now, they are, stories of like, Dennis the Menace and Roger the Dodger getting up to tricks and everything. Yeah. And they would do certain naughty things, like with the catapult and everything. But at the end of their little rebellion, their parents would always win. And then if you look at the Beano now, it's a bit different. And I think with that, what I'm saying is that respect for authority was still there, and I think now it's not.
But I think we're overlooking something that's an incredibly important factor.
Go for it.
Which was in that time period, you had the emergence of the middle class and the downward spiral of the aristocracy. And with the aristocracy comes the representation of institution, of order, social hierarchy, social order, and or let's say the way things should be. Know your place. Was it the two Ronnies that did the sketch of?
Seriously, the aristocracy maintained that.
No, it's with John Cleese. So he had
John
like
Cleese,
a tall person who was the upper echelons of, and then it just went down like that.
Yeah. But that's a manifestation of the class system in Britain. But I suppose the aristocracy was a representation of institution, but also upholding some part of institutionalism, because they wanted to maintain their place in society. They didn't want to lose it, but at the same time
play cricket with the paupers.
Yeah. So. And they provided jobs for the local community. Many of them had stately homes in villages. They provided jobs to be able to come and, work in this house, work in the gardens, cook and stuff like that. It might not have been a great job, but there weren't many great jobs about at the time if you didn't have many skills.
Yeah, but it's also education as well.
So the emergence of the middle class also would have also changed societal values. Is now we can believe in ourselves. We have the freedom. We don't have to rely upon others. Individualism.
Yes. Utilitarianism.
Because when you start thinking in an individual sense that, I actually don't have to do this, and you start questioning authority, and those rebellions happen. I mean, look at the rise of subcultures after post-war Britain. The teddy boys, the mods, the punks, the rockers. You're questioning.
Exactly. The society within which you live.
The authority, the tradition, the old ways.
Why should I have to pay him rent because I live on his land? Why should I have to go to church on a Sunday because it's owned by the local lord or baron? Why should I have to listen to the government? Why?
But you know what's interesting is that even in regards to like, the sort of like Christmas holidays, I even hear people in the gym when I've gone, like complaining that they have to see the family. And this is like the one...
Wallah, I've heard this.
Yeah.
I've heard this. People getting anxiety about gifts that they have to buy and this kind of massive responsibility to now spend and being forced to spend. Family sad to hear, actually.
Look,
I hear it in the gym.
Like before, we would establish we go to the gym or at some point in our lives.
What do you mean?
But like when I was growing up, my grandparents made it a big deal, the 25th of December, getting the family in. But as soon as they started to get older and, died, we don't do it.
Brothers and sisters and friends, I see that you're enjoying the content. How come you've not clicked subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel? And if you're watching via Rumble, how come you've not subscribed on our Rumble channel? If you like the content, you like the guests, you like what we're talking about, it's absolutely inexcusable and cheeky for you not to click subscribe. Thank you and Jazakallah khair. Why do you think 97.3% of all elderly in care homes are white Brits?
I think because we go back to the values, and we did a short about this, didn't we, with Deepal? We were responding to an Islamophobic comment, and from my experience with my Muslim friends, a lot of their parents live in the same house as them. They would never allow their parents to be put in a care home all cooped up and everything like that. And that's because, again, it's thinking individually. It's sort of like, oh, my parents done their bit now, I've got to live my life sort of thing.
Brits had these same values.
But
not too long ago.
And then you've got the emergence also of the rat race in the 90s. Suddenly, there's all these financial sectors emerging. More and more people start working. The disillusion of the family values in the sense that women can work and should be able to work as well. So women start going to work. Men start going to work. How on earth have they got time to look after an elderly mother or father?
The average age of marriage in this country is now 30.
Muslim families still do it.
Yes.
Because they insist, because they have that moral value there.
But gents, what I'm trying to posit to you guys though is we've agreed on but it wasn't too long ago. It's only 40 years ago, 50 years ago max, that these very values that we're now saying Muslims tend to practice, the white Brits practice this. They had big families, they looked after their elderly, they stayed in multi-generational homes. But you're saying all these different shifts influenced that, the rat race of the 90s, the rise of the middle class, and all these things, subculture. You guys are saying that these things eroded traditional institutions.
When you've had a war, and we've heard about brutalism architecture, which is awful, and Coventry, for example, that was a wonderful medieval city, people had an idea to question the old order, which the old order, especially when it comes to Europe, Western Europe, is based on imperial might, going over to Africa and building, colonial architecture, isn't it? All the pillars, all that good stuff.
Pillars.
Pillars.
I mean, look, pillar
train tracks in India.
Silent Night will be on the uprise of that.
And I think that there's this association with the past of Victorian Britain and, these traditional values being steeped in imperialism, and they wanted to change and they wanted to make all these ugly buildings. And Coventry, no offense to anyone that lives in Coventry, I mean, I'm a big fan of the specials, but it's representative of change. The architecture's changing. There's more than one channel. It's not just about, listening to the radio, the Archers and everything like that. It's not just about reading the comic that you get once a week. It's about video games.
What Dilly was saying in terms of all of these different cultural shifts but also who above? Who does this benefit?
Yes.
That's the real question there.
And because you'll find that many will blame immigrants.
Yeah.
Or those who are heavily relying on the welfare estate. There is some data that suggested, I'm not sure about the updated data, but there was some suggested data that certain ethnic minorities are more reliant on welfare benefits than others. That those families that tend to be larger, in this case Muslims, of colour, they are heavily reliant on benefits. Therefore, life to raise larger families are bigger. These are all the dog whistle, the kind of scapegoating. But ultimately, the ruling elite and the capitalist corporations who benefit from this, they're the ones who benefit. Because quite frankly, they don't care if it's black, brown or white, Muslim or non-Muslim, who's basically, again, they're cheap labour from. Who are they benefiting from? I just find it unfortunate, and I want to get your thoughts on this, how frustrations are not channeled there.
Yeah, exactly.
That generation after generation, it always goes to the minorities or the most discriminated. and the most subjugated.
I mean, it's the fear of the unknown, isn't it? And obviously the elites don't want the people to club together and go, actually, it's the few. They want to, focus on the downtrodden and the people that are othered. I mean, there's a concept called moral panics. Sandy Cohen during the 60s, like the mods and rockers. I don't know why I keep talking about mods, but during the 60s, mods and rockers would fight. And apparently it was a big deal, but it only happened once, apparently. It was only a little fight, but the media, exaggerated it completely. And, people were saying, oh, we've got to do this. And that was to implement certain policies. So I did my master's in policy, and there's this concept called policy narrative. So when elites want to sort of channel a certain political notion, they want to get the media involved. So now, obviously, it's about the invasion from the boats and everything like that. And like I only found out the other day that the contribution of the migrants coming in over on the boats is hardly anything.
Minuscule.
Exactly, but if someone's just reading the mainstream media and like on X and listening to certain people that have got seem to say the right things, the buzzwords, like wear a suit or whatever, or they relate to them, they'll believe them, and then all that anger is going to, like you say, the wrong direction. So
just to uphold the Orientalist viewpoint and the othering viewpoint that these people, these brown people, these foreign people are like this, that, and the other, which then feeds into the global system of kind of like disrupting the Middle East. We don't really want to go too much in the Middle East topics, but disrupting the Middle East, keeping the Muslims in particular disunited because they're animals and they're barbaric and all of these things that they claim. And it feeds into the whole system of Islamophobia. And
so we're talking about the global Islamophobia industry geared up from war on terror, otherizing the Muslims, dehumanizing the Muslims, the brown, non-white, uncivilized, basically suicide bomb killing, Sharia loving, head chopping nut jobs abroad, and at home the guys who are to blame for unemployment, bad housing, lack of education, loss of identity.
Why is it that when like with the grooming gangs, for example, why is it that it's Islam to blame for the Muslim, the grooming gangs? Where, what was it, a statistic that you put up, because we were debating a chap called Paul, and he was saying it's Islam to blame for the grooming gangs. It's this, but the actual statistic is quite
the opposite. What was interesting about him is that I'd never heard. Have you heard this before? He said the problem with Muslims is they don't know how to use the toilets properly.
Oh wow, no, I thought we were. If there's one thing we're pretty good at, is using.
I thought that would be something that we'd be proud to talk about. They said they don't know how to use the toilets. They leave them and they leave a mess everywhere.
And but this is the thing that he emphasised: Pakistani Muslims.
Yeah,
I had to wipe the spit.
Feel that thing.
Yeah. But you know what was funny though? Well, actually, mashallah, it was a nice ending, I'd say, because me and him, we were having a chat with him, and we just took every argument that he had, so-called argument, and we spoke to him like a human being, let him have his rage and say, well, actually, it's not this. It actually means this and this. And he was like, oh, no one's actually ever said that. Oh, do you actually know any Muslims, sir? No. And tell Mama, I've used this statistic so many times. When Boris Johnson, because you're doing it with your research, aren't you, about the correlation of like Islamophobic attacks when somebody
Conservative party and the influence upon a permissive space of Islamophobia.
Is that a piece of research you're currently doing or will be doing?
I am.
Fantastic.
He's doing his own way. So in 2018, when Boris Johnson referred to, al-Niqab, yes, letterboxes and all that sort of thing, Islamophobic incidents and reports increased by about 300%. Why? Because you've got somebody who is in power saying these things. People on the street are going to think, well, that's acceptable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It influences that permissive space of Islamophobia.
Do you know the sad reality is also, when you look at the notions of free speech and freedom of expression in the European context, it was actually a very noble and laudable thing, because its roots began from basically questioning authority and tyranny, ultimately against the Vatican, the role of Christian institutions, which were arguably very oppressive to the lay masses for centuries. So freedom of speech would always traditionally be there to actually protect the most discriminated and oppressed. But now it's become a vehicle and a tool to actually attack the most discriminated and the most oppressed. But, oppression, discrimination, victimization, it's all good and well. It happens. It exists. it's important that we discuss it. I also believe self-reflection, introspection is also important. So just on 2 points about the grooming thing. When I've asked people from those who lean towards the far out, Nick Griffin, Jim Dowson, Mark Collette, Alexa Phillips, Jada Franson and others, on and off camera, I said it cannot be an Islamic issue because those perpetrators would have cited Quran and Hadith.
Yeah.
They would have cited the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to Aisha. No one cites Quran. No one cites what your left hand and right hand can possess.
Yeah.
No one mentions anything.
Yeah.
So it cannot be. There is no religious motivation behind it. Okay, so that's move on. The next thing is then there's a race element. It's Pakistanis. Okay. In some towns and cities, there could be a disproportionate percentage by the very virtue that demographically Pakistanis also have a presence in those towns and cities. But if you look at the race element that they specifically targeted white girls, it can be argued very easily that if there were another ethnic group of girls that were in those vulnerable situations, they would have been taken advantage of as well.
Absolutely.
So what I want to ask you guys is, are there some issues which non-white Muslims in the UK, of which the vast majority of Muslims in the UK are non-white? I think either it's 8% or 12% identify as white. The rest are non-white. Is there some responsibility on these communities to portray Islam in a better light? Chris? Besides takeaways and having shitty roads and
chicken boxes, Billy, on Coventry
chicken
Road.
boxes and...
Absolutely, 100%. I said this to Ben when he interviewed me for his research at undergrad level. I said, a lot of these South Asians that came here in the 1960s and 50s, they had a fantastic opportunity to show what Islam is. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I would probably argue a lot of them didn't, but I would understand why, because they didn't come here to spread Islam.
It wasn't a priority.
They came here to work.
Work, money, and the priorities became halal meat, somewhere to pray, where to bury.
That was the religious
that
priorities,
was it.
Yes.
That's some of my father's forefathers.
Yeah.
It wasn't to give dawah.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. It was to work, send money back home.
Yeah.
Actually, not to even settle permanently. That just happened.
Yeah.
Incentivized. Really, it was where should we pray? Where do we get our meat from? And where do we bury our dead?
Yeah. And I used to believe that they still could have acted in a better way,
Agreed.
potentially, and stuff like that.
Agreed.
But then my view changed a little bit when I lived in Morocco, because I experienced being an immigrant, and I knew what it was like to be able to go to places and not be able to truly understand what they're talking about, and to struggle with paying things and having to go and pay electricity and all these different bills. And it must be a real struggle sometimes for people that come to the UK and have to even ring up the council and speak to somebody. That must be quite terrifying, because some people on the other end of the phone, they're speaking in such fast, fluent English. It's really hard, and they're panicking because it's an official organisation. Things like that really changed my mind. And I really thought, well, when people came to the UK in the 50s and 60s, yes, we agreed that their priority wasn't to spread Islam. And I did think, well, still they could have behaved better. But you have to put yourself in the shoes of a migrant. By God, is it difficult? It's not easy at all. And, I take my hat off to them, even if they came here just to work. So what? They came here to have a better life and to give money to their family and to help, for future generations. That's commendable. We should be taking our hats off to people like that. So when people came here, I would say maybe then their responsibility was on the parenting. Because then you started seeing people get involved in gangs and stuff. And you can look at data and research that suggests that those that are involved in, poorly socioeconomic areas are more likely to be involved in crime. It's not a race or religion thing.
No.
It's socioeconomic. People I know, for example, South Asians that grew up in Kent, and they were never involved in gangs, crime, or anything like that because they had a good socioeconomic circumstance and environment. So, having said all of that, nevertheless, we cannot disregard that our responsibility is to be good towards whether the person in front of us is Muslim or non-Muslim, to show the good character, the good manners, and all of these different things, and to embody the characteristics of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Turning even our, I should be technically, if I'm talking to you, facing this way.
Yeah.
Although Jamal might not like that. So all of these characteristics, had we embodied them a little bit more, regardless of it, I'm not bothered about the colour of people, whoever, even if it was, Malaysians that immigrated to the UK. We embodied this more. That would have changed things. And I'm interested in the cultural perspective as well. I'm sorry, just a final point on this is that when I encountered Arabs, I thought, I wonder if it would be different if Arabs were the ones that did a mass immigration to the UK. How would British people see Muslims then? Because Arabs, particularly from the Sham region, they're very sociable. They're very kind of like, quote unquote, liberal in some senses. You know, they're not very conservative in some of their dress sometimes. Would that have impacted the UK and how the UK sees Islam? And would have it benefited the Islamophobia industry or went against it? But then, if you look at Australia,
where there is Levant,
a lot of Lebanese and Syrians face a hell of a lot of racism there. And they get called things. You know, the word Lebo is a derogatory term there.
I want to ask you guys something. It's all linked, because right now we've entered that part of the conversation where it's just free for all. Everything's going to be linked to everything. Do you guys believe that the manifestation of Islam is ultimately Muslims? Not is the beliefs, the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah and the scholarly works of the ulama. But in terms of the manifestation of Islam, the embodiment of it in real life terms, are those who adhere to it, or at least claim to be adherents of it. Do you believe the vast majority, well, you can't, because statistically it's the case, the vast majority of it is non-white? Whether it's Britain, France with the Algerians and the Maghrebis, in the Netherlands with the Moroccans and the Turks, in Germany it's the Turks. In these major European countries, there's a huge, sizable minority of Muslims, and they are not white. They've generationally have been there. Second, now we've entered the third generation. Is there a cultural issue here? Because no matter how much you try, there are undeniable things about the manifestation of Muslims. For example, our women, this may change, and it's changing. Inshallah, it doesn't change too much. We don't want it to change too much. The dress code, the hijab, the headscarf, modest clothing. Muslim men will most likely than not have a beard. If not for religious reasons, culturally it's a flex from some of their countries, or the lands that they come from. Alcohol, it's not really a thing. It's haram, of course, but even those who do it, it's not done openly.
Still taboo.
It's taboo. If you do it, you still do it secretly. It's not something you go and tell your families about. That doesn't matter if you're Arab or Asian or white or black or anything in between. These are things that will be an overlap east and west. Women, their dress code, are certain cultural practices which are dictated by the halal and the haram of Islam. Do you think these perceptions will ever change, considering that this is a staple of how Muslims are, irrespective of their race and their skin color? That whether you're white, black or brown, if you're a practicing Muslim, you probably will wear the hijab or jilbab. Or
not if you assimilate.
So what is it? So do we want assimilation? Because assimilation, these are the problems with assimilation.
We spoke to, in Halal Expo, we spoke to a woman who was from Yorkshire. She was a white Muslim lady. And she said that she loves to remain an English Yorkshire pudding. And what she meant by that was that she loves to dress modestly, but in a reflection of English dress. So she'll wear, like, for example, a long dress, but it may be from, I don't know, TK Maxx or whatever.
Sure.
So it's a reflection of still, it's the culture that we live in. It reflects that kind of identity, but it's still modest.
It's not a black abaya.
There we are.
What did she do about the hair covering then? Because that's culture.
Oh, she was wearing a headscarf, wasn't it? It was a colourful one.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think colour plays quite a big role.
No, but the thing is I know Brother Bob, Robert Carter, like he tweeted something quite a while ago. Well, he just tweet quite a lot, doesn't he? Yeah. He's always on his X. And he found a picture, like some archive footage from, the early night, and the women were covered.
They were.
So
Yeah, but that was,
You know-
I think that was a silly video for people to put
No,
out.
but I think, but
Because
looking
people
back,
coming
maybe-
out from the cotton mills, it was just,
No,
it was dressed
no, because
women weren't walking around in the tens and hundreds of thousands dressed like that.
Do you not remember though? I don't know if you've seen it.
Victorian
like,
period. they
Yeah.
did.
Victorian
Even
period,
during
that was
even
19
during the 50s.
That was post-war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What Robert shared was post-war.
yeah.
So, but there's also, and I don't know what it's called, like when, like especially during the 50s and the 40s, when women would wear. It's not like it's obviously it's not a hijab, but it was like a nap. I don't know what you call it.
Queen used to wear it. It's like a
Yes,
tied here
yes,
and it's up
exactly,
here.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Type of veil.
Yeah, a type of veil, and obviously we don't really do that anymore unless you're vintage and you know like that kind of thing. But I think no matter what Muslims seem to do, as what you're referring to, like there's always going to be an othering with it. I think with us, when people see, well, especially with me,
How much anglicizing of culture can you do until it becomes harmonized with
I don't.
wherever seen as indigenous? That's what basically what I'm asking.
I don't think it. Abdullah William Quilliam, he established a convert, established Britain's first mosque. Rahimahullah,
I mean-
great chap. He would wear his standard, Victorian, attire, but then on a Friday he'd wear a Turkish Ottoman sort of,
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff, like mixing the two. But when he wore the sort of othered, so to speak, outfit, then there'd be like the cow dung thrown at him. But when he was wearing his British attire, like he was sort of seen as more respected. I mean, a doctor that spoke at the event that we were at last night, a surgeon who works in Gaza, he's wearing a suit. But he was even saying he's experienced things, even though he's dressing in a particular way, sort of simulating.
It's based in racism as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a mix here because I've always thought that Islamophobia is a form of cultural racism, and it all merges together.
Although I don't like that term.
Really,
Yeah.
What, cultural racism?
No, Islamophobia.
Oh, I don't either.
No, because phobia first and foremost is an irrational fear. So there's an element of Islam hatred which is irrational and grounded in ignorance and a lack of vision, but some of it's very well thought out.
Yeah.
And some of it's very well calculated.
but would you say that's calculated from the upper echelons of the media moguls?
Yes, but there is also a racial element of what we understand Islamophobia to be.
That's the concept. But
Yeah.
but the term itself, Islamophobia, is very problematic.
I find it problematic, and that's why the likes of APBG and other Muslim organizations have struggled to define it properly.
Yeah.
Because I think what Muslims are seeking when we criticize these notions is that, well, if Jews are protected under anti-Semitism laws, then why cannot Muslims be? Well, that's because being a Jew is a race and a religion.
Okay, Theodor Herzl,
Yeah.
he's a self-proclaimed atheist.
Yep.
But he founded Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't bothered about taking the state to Palestine. It was going to be in Canada, America, Madagascar and the like. But to get the sort of legitimacy, that's when he started speaking to rabbis, etc.
But that's the Israeli nationality. He's talking about the Jewish nationality, the actual ethnicity. not the nationality.
But he's an Austrian, a European.
The point I'm trying to make is, gents, is that how much of wearing suits and wearing tartan or wearing
is going to benefit.
is ultimately gonna. The elephant in the room is
How far do you go?
How far do you go until that type of kind of cultural harmonization becomes an issue? But I find this entire conversation ajib. I'll tell you why. Because we need. This happens to me sometimes. Even I forget. I'm like, why am I talking about Islam as an Eastern religion when Christianity is also an Eastern religion?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Isa alayhi salam is a Semitic, he's a Semite from Bani Israel.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like a Nordic king with blonde hair and blue eyes. He's a brown man that would have worn something very similar to a thobe,
Yeah.
one of your potato bags, stitchy one, with sandals,
Yeah.
right? That is also a non-Western, it's an Eastern type of faith. In the same way Islam is, the same way Judaism. So why does Islam get that end of the bargain, whereas you're foreign, you're Eastern, goat herders and desert dwellers? The prophet that you've made, God, is also Eastern, from the deserts,
Yeah.
from that neck of the woods, from Palestine.
I think I know the answer to this.
Go for it.
It's our friend colonialism and trade. If we look at the greatest empires in the world, what was it? the British, the Roman, but also the ultimate Muslim empires. And what did they want to do? The West, the British were threatened by this. And what did they want to do? They wanted to disunite the Muslims, because what unites the Muslims is Islam. And we know about the colonial history, what happened then. We can debate all that, all day. But from those years, from about, the 1700s, I always found, if when we look at history, that slow encroachment to view the Muslim as a backward religion or a backward culture.
That's natural?
No, because I think it all stems from wanting the land. I think it stems from wanting to take Jerusalem, to take Bethlehem and all this, because obviously that's in Palestine.
But my question about that is that if Christianity is so entwined within British institutionalism and nationalism and what represents the UK, then anything that opposes that would be seen as a natural threat anyway. If you've got a Muslim state, let's just hypothetically speaking, a random country, and it follows Islam and all the people are Muslim, and then suddenly you've got an encroachment of people coming in who are Christians or whatever religion that's not Islam, and they start kind of influencing your culture and identity.
Christianity is the
You're
best
going
example.
to see it as a threat.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking, because from the many conversations we've had, now you've kind of blamed colonialism, and that's fine.
And trade.
And trade, there's truth to that, right? But we spoke about this off camera before we started filming, that to what extent was Islamic conquest seen as empire building, right? Because yes, we can say, oh, the Khulafa al-Rashideen, may Allah be pleased with them, they went out with these noble efforts for them to either accept Islam, bring them to Islam, invite them to Islam. If not, you pay the humiliating jizya tax. So you guys think that we have to pay the tax and not become Muslim, or we conquer. We can't move away from that. You can't move away from the fact that the Umayyads and the Abbasids and the Ghaznavids, the Ottomans, the Seljuks, all these empires and states and polities that Muslims romanticize and praise, they too also embarked in conquests. Yes, Islam was not spread by the sword. It was spread by the sword in some areas, spread by the pen in other areas, spread by trade in other areas. There's not one fit all. It depends on regions. But I want to ask you, Chris, while I asked you off camera, do you see a difference between how Islam spread and how European colonialism spread?
Yeah, as we were talking about, it's about the difference is that the colonialist kind of British Western ideas were put at the forefront of their invasions in the aim to pillage, in the aim to take resources, in the aim to kind of degrade these countries and take whatever they have, common theft on a mass scale. We're talking about all these diamonds and jewels and everything else, but also other things. God knows how many villages and towns they went to that stole upon, stealing. But the Muslims did not go around stealing and stealing and stealing. The Muslim traders went to Malaysia when Malaysia was a non-Muslim country and started trading. And a trader would say to another trader, you know what, you stay there, you take the rest of the custom for today because I've done well. So the good manners. That's how a lot of, the Muslim empire was spread.
Malaysia, Sri Lanka, West Africa.
Exactly. And if it wasn't through manners or trade, it was through defending the defenseless. It was through seeing that these people are being targeted and their villages are being burnt. We have a moral obligation as our neighbor to go and protect them. And ultimately, those people saw that as the manners, as the trade came in, these Muslims are helping us and defending us. What a beautiful religion is that? You know what? I'm going to join it. And it spread like that. Oh, rubbish. Tommy Robinson talking about the sword.
But then I always sort of think that, when people talk about Britain being great and when, because I know Tommy wants to have Empire Day. That's a celebration of oppression, isn't it?
He wants to bring back the chimney sweep.
Yeah. Because I argue, when was Britain in terms of a social entity ever great, when there was free healthcare and everything, and as people said, it was a pure white country, etc. Really, it was a majority working class country that was beaten down by the the elite. If you wanted to travel, you'd have to join the army and shoot some, go to Africa and kill people, etc. Join the Red Coast and everything. No free healthcare or whatever. And then after the war, many people were killed. had to invite people over. I think people forget this. Had to invite people from the former colonies to help stabilize Britain again.
Pause right there. The likes of Reform, the likes of Tommy Robinson, the likes of many white nationalists, irrespective of where they fall in the spectrum, would say, but that was not done for our democratic mandate. Incentivized migration to rebuild countries after 2 world wars was not a decision we voted for. It was a decision which the ruling elite made on our part. So you invited these people to come over to our countries. I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
So fine.
What about vice versa, though, Dilly?
I agree. How about when you guys came over and stayed for 200 years? No one did that via invitation either.
Yeah.
Right? But the point is, that's happened now. 200 years ago. You know, when Chris earlier said, I don't know if you caught it on camera or not, when you were describing some of the areas, right? Or like what would happen if it was Arabs that migrated to Britain, but not what they did to France.
Yeah.
And the Moroccans did to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And the Turks did in Germany. It's still the same situation.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a certain part of colonialism which is inseparable to the former colonies. For example, I believe white Brits and South Asians are inseparable. You may not like it, but it's an uncomfortable reality.
In the UK.
In the UK, and the history is amazing.
Yeah.
What was the second capital of the empire? It was Calcutta.
Yeah.
The crown jewel of the empire was India, right? The national dish for Britain, you know, it changes year by year.
Chicken tikka masala.
Chicken tikka masala, or vindaloo, or lamb, or
we spoke about this in our latest
in the same way
video.
that the Algerians and their history is sadly, in the last 200 to 300 years, inseparable to that of French colonialism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the story goes.
And arguably, France is a lot worse a place for the Muslims than the UK.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But the thing is that like when we talk about what happened post World War II, we call that like what does Karl Marx call it? An epoch, so to speak. Call that an epoch. What did people want to do? They wanted freedom. They wanted to love each other. What was the 60s hippie movement about? Loving each other. Just like the Beatles, you know.
The anti-war movement.
Yes, exactly. All these things. People coming together from
Second
different
wave
cultures.
feminism.
Where did the Beatles go? When did they start doing all those guitars? They went to India. And then they found themselves. Like,
Because they were lost before, but they had no moral compass, which goes back to what we were saying earlier about the 40s and 50s.
yeah. And
The loss of the moral compass.
so I think with democracy, isn't that to include everyone that comes? Okay, yeah, economically it was viable to bring people over, and as we say, well, we went over there, so it's inevitable for people to come over here. And people been traveling and like interchanging and like doing all this, invading each other for years. But I think now, because it's more televised and we have podcasts like this where, you know, we can talk about it, we can see it, we can film it, go live on TikTok and all that sort of stuff. But people came over here to rebuild Britain, to contribute, to, you know, send their kids to British schools. They brought the families over. And then we talk about, like, you know, white flight, as they call it. That I mean, maybe that's a separate issue or whatever. Yeah. I mean, my granddad's neighbour, Pakistanis, they get along fine. Obviously, there's a bit of a skew with there. But from what I've seen, I think a lot of things are probably blown out of proportion. And I think that the policy with migration is that there wasn't a set thing to do to bring people in and bring people together to what, you know, unites us, really.
But what you said earlier is that sometimes we don't want to be brought together.
Do you know what I've clocked about you two?
Go on.
I've clocked in the last 45 minutes. Jamal, how long have we been filming?
Hour 20.
You're definitely more of an optimist. Whereas Chris is more a bit of a realist, not pessimist because that's not from the Sunnah, but a realist.
I usually describe myself as a pessimist.
Yeah, but you seem way more optimistic.
Look.
And more forgiving of the Muslims and more critical of empire and the establishment. But Chris here seems to be a bit more of a realist, and I'll tell you why. Because, brothers, you know, human beings are social creatures. In the sense that we naturally gravitate towards those who look like us, sound like us, live like us, speak like us, follow the same religion as us, and so forth. It's natural, bro. I don't care if you're white, black or brown, Muslim or non-Muslim.
Oh, yeah,
you naturally gravitate towards in-group tribalhood. It just is, isn't it?
That's football. You know, like, you know, he's a Chelsea fan. I'm a Forest and Walsall fan. Like, I will go towards them, of course. But at the same time, what's looking at the bigger picture, what brings us together? What did Mohamed Salah do when Liverpool fans? Their stereotype here. Liverpool fans and Chelsea fans
You
are
don't get ready
probably
for my counter. I know where you're
okay,
going.
yeah.
I'm gonna
So
counter.
racist, right?
Okay.
But they love Mohammed. They love Demba Ba because he's scoring goals.
But they're still getting pissed up in a pub.
Yes, no, of course.
So the reason for getting together is still drunken chants.
Hang on though.
And if you stop drinking in the pub with them, they won't be your friend anymore.
Yeah, I kind of experienced
So one
this.
thing is,
You've experienced it more than me, so you should know about that more than anything.
So okay, I've
Mohamed Salah used football to bring people of different backgrounds together.
And now he posts the annual Christmas tree post, and
forget his shortcomings. But at that point,
Yes.
let's go back to 20.
Islamophobia did drop, by the way. There was a year or two where the anti-Muslim hate crime in Liverpool, at least, it dropped.
In Merseyside, 97%.
It did.
Exactly.
It did.
Why? Because football, for whatever reason, the Brits love it.
Yeah.
Even the Scottish, even though they're not very good at it.
Yeah.
But it brings us together. Yes, there are drunken elements to it. However, what somebody said to me is that football has the capacity to be to have a level playing field. And my dream is that we have Muslims playing for the England national team, proud Muslims playing for the England national team, visually being Muslim, right? Not hiding it or anything like that, because that is in the medium. That is what we see all the time in the sports, because it's everywhere, isn't it? Sky Sports is everywhere. Everybody knows who Manchester United is. Everybody knows what's happening with the World Cup, really, even if you don't like football. And if you've got somebody called Mohammed scoring the goal for England, whacking his chest
until he misses a penalty, like Saka.
And again, it's very fickle. It's very fickle. But I'm talking about building it for the ground up. And there's a great project that's in Leeds High Park Football Club. A Tunisian brother called Adel.
I don't think it's going to change society.
But I think
so many women that don't care about.
It's a grassroots thing. But it's a grassroots thing.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe within that sphere, yeah.
Okay.
But it's got to start somewhere. We've got to plant the seed and water it, and sometimes it might not grow into the big tree that we want it to be. It might be a cactus.
We have 24 Muslim MPs. I think around about, if you include SNP, we have around between 18 to 24 Muslim MPs. We have a Muslim mayor of London. We have Muslim sportsmen, Amir Khan, others that play in the English cricket team, other emerging boxers, talented Muslim non-white sports people that contribute towards representing Britain in the global stage. We have Riz Ahmed, Hollywood actor. That's not changed much.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because
but
the industry is still there, and they're working hard, and they're pumping millions upon millions upon millions.
It's gotten worse.
And they've got so many different elements.
But when you've got
to it.
like a grassroots thing going off, so if you've got like Muslims going to the football wearing Stone Island, away from the pub,
I was going
and
to
they're having
I was worried about this guy here.
Yeah. He's a bit scared, but I think from the grassroots, that's where it has to start. So I sort of got involved in a local football team in Nottingham, and I'm seeing little kids, 7 years old, from Japan, China, Pakistan, and they're all coming together.
Ben, you were talking about how grassroots changes have to happen for communities to better understand each other. Chris seems a bit more sceptical of that. So am I, because I don't think you can force people to get on. I don't think you can force people to even necessarily understand why certain communities do the things that they do. So you give me an example of where grassroots efforts have worked.
The specials in Coventry. When you've got individuals coming from the West Indies, Jamaica and the like, and they're put into the council estates and whatever with, traditional, white working class individuals, the children grow up together. They haven't learnt that they're not supposed to like that person. What do? They make a band. They like a bit of jazz, they like a bit of reggae, and they come together in the specials. The Nelson Mandela movement with Jerry Dammers, that was huge. That was two peoples coming together. That's what I want to see more of. And I know it's not perfect. I'm not daft. The specials are one of the greatest.
That was That was just for clarification. That was Jamaicans coming to the UK, presumably Windrush generation.
Yeah, like 19.
And they were integrating, and they made a band together with white people, but the Jamaicans didn't say, "Sorry, lads, I've got to go and make wudu and pray," or "I can't meet you on Friday because I've got to go to the mosque." They got a shared religion.
No, Chris makes a valid point here, bro. And look, the whole point of this conversation that I want with you guys today is to understand what things are undeniably different and cannot be harmonized, and those things where we can work on. And Muslims should be doing better. That's ultimately it.
Yeah.
I know before we started playing again, Diddy, where's the conversation going? That's where I want it to go. What can we as Muslims do better? What is irreconcilable? What those things which you can't, because Chris makes a point. You can get a band, you can have a link up, and even though Jamaicans weren't white, there's still cultural and religious affiliations and overlaps. The Muslim is different, bro. There's certain things you just cannot engage in.
Yeah,
of course.
I want white people of this country to be able to go to the Muslim areas and to say, "Wow, this is beautiful, isn't it? I can get this kind of food and that kind of food, and wow, look how clean it is. Or look at these beautiful flowers. Oh, look, somebody's selling, I don't know, honey from Yemen. Wow, look how amazing that is. Look how people are so polite and friendly." But at the same time, yeah, they're different from us. But the difference, by being different, is by inspiring them to become Muslim.
So
if we become like them, they're not wanting to become Muslim because they're not seeing the best of what Islam has to offer.
So what can Alam Rock do better? What can BD7 or BD3 do better? What can Berry Park and Luton do better? What can what can Newham or Tower Hamlets do better?
We were going to make a video showing, look how disgraceful these areas are in terms of the rubbish on the floor and the rats. But then we came across an interesting point. The councils aren't even coming to collect the bins, so what do?
That's Birmingham.
Are you just blaming Asians because they haven't, they're throwing stuff on the floor? But actually it's the council and the elites and the political situation that have not done their responsibility. Had they done that, maybe then there wouldn't be any rubbish on the floor. But at the same time, we shouldn't be sitting in BMWs and Audis at 3 o'clock in the morning, throwing our dessert boxes out the window on the floor. Take some bloody responsibility as well.
Agreed.
I mean, I always remember being in Cafe Nera and, two, sisters, wearing hijab, but they were playing loud music and having their feet on the chairs. And I remember the friendly barista said, "Oh, do you mind keeping it down and whatever?" And they gave her attitude. And I could tell instantly that barista was going to say, typical Muslims. Yeah, we look, within our communities, we have to have accountability. I completely and utterly agree.
What could we do better?
I think just abide by the Sunnah.
We have to be the best version of ourselves as Muslims. That's the thing. It's not a simulation to be like them, to be better. It's not to kind of like go full force the other way and just follow what our parents came with or whatever that is. It's to be the best Muslim possible collectively as a community in the Alam Rocks, in East London, wherever it may be, and build a beautiful community that people love to come to. I will admit this as a white male. We as white male Muslims still, despite being Muslims, we are in the best privileged position within the Muslim community. And there's no doubt about that. Being a male and a Muslim and white, we can still walk down the street and nobody has a clue that you're a Muslim, especially like this. Yeah. And being called Christopher and Ben. Yeah. Nobody has a clue. Like your pigmentation changes and become brown. You have a beard or you wear a hijab. And it's completely different. And again, that's what Morocco taught me as a lesson. And there's a very interesting documentary. You might have seen it. It's a series on Channel 4 or ITV. I think it's 4. And it's called Go Back to Where You Came From.
Yeah, with Sister Bushra.
Yeah.
Sister Bushra.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You put yourself in their situation, and by God, you will see how different it is and how challenging it is. So I have sympathy for the Muslim community, and I know many of them. They work tirelessly day in and day out to try and build bridges with other communities. And they really try hard and they have good etiquette and akhlaq and all of this. But it's not everybody. Not everybody's bad and not everybody's good. And those that are good should try and influence even more so those that are bad, and those that are bad should try and pull up their socks and try and work a bit harder. Like I said on camera, I want to try as a national campaign to try and get our Muslim communities, the societies, the streets to be the most beautiful places in the whole of Britain. I want to see them blooming. Spring's coming, daffodils will be blooming soon, and I want to see daffodils in Muslim communities because we have a history of Islamic gardens. Look at the Cambridge Mosque. Look how beautiful that is. That's good. I showed my mother that mosque. She said, wow, that's stunning. I would love to go and visit that. Go and show her another mosque in an area that's like disgusting and industrial and stuff. She'd be frightened.
Well, the thing that I've noticed is that I've never heard, I mean, there might be, I don't know, but I've never heard of like a mosque that has like a tea and biscuits evening for the, you know, for the elderly. You know, things,
coffee morning.
or coffee mornings or something like that, you know, to read Woman magazine or something like that. I start off like sort of slowly. And because aren't mosques supposed to be like the, you know, the debtors of the community?
Yeah. And pillars and not pillows.
Yeah. I'm dyslexic, by the way. Like, you know, and aren't we supposed to serve our communities as well?
Agreed.
And yeah, I want to see that. We need to do something, Dilly. Like we
It
need
sounds
to.
good. You know, some of the things that you guys have suggested, I agree with you. If some of the Muslim majority areas where there's a heavy demographic, those places should be the most pleasant places to visit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That aesthetic should be one that's comforting and welcoming. Now, I'm not talking about abandoning mosques and minarets, but mosques and minarets tend to look nicer in nicer looking areas.
Yeah.
Right? There is a huge onus and negligence from the local authorities. There's no two ways about that, but that shouldn't be an excuse for shortcomings in our behaviour and how we behave in these said areas. And there's lots for us to do without a shadow of a doubt. How much of the concerns of the white population in Britain and broadly speaking the West, but let's talk about Britain, are genuine? Like, for example, loss of identity, all is being toned, policed about what's racist and what's politically correct. Looking at, you know, many people have concerns about demographic shifts, that, oh my God, we're going to become extinct.
Yeah.
People feeling that they are being replaced. People feeling that whatever being British or English meant is eroding away at the behest of always mollycoddling, facilitating, accommodating migrants and people from foreign countries. Concerns to do with, here we are, can barely get a doctor's appointment, but next man can come from Afghanistan, or a Kurdish guy can come, or someone can come through the boats, or even legal migration. Even legal migration has now become a problem, of which the highest number in the last couple of years has been from India. That they can land a job, or they'll end up in a hotel or a hostel, they'll get 3 meals, and here we are struggling. Can barely get an appointment with the doctors, can barely get 3 meals a day for my children, we have to rely on food banks, and so forth. So this kind of resentment.
Yeah.
I feel some of it is actually genuine.
It is.
Yeah.
It's built upon genuine naivety sometimes as well.
So, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because some of it is based on misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, fake news, distortion of reality, an exaggeration of stats and facts. But it's there. The optics of it's there.
Yeah.
You're seeing people coming off boats, because that's what the mainstream media is feeding you. Whether it's 300 or 30,000, they are landing here. They are getting into hotels. Yeah. They are getting 3 meals a day. Yeah. That's a lot that can be said than many white families out there.
Yeah.
So those tensions and concerns are genuine. They're serious. And a lot of it was sadly used in the recent race riots that we had last August and last July. We had the horrific incident of the Southport tragedy. 3 young girls were killed. So many more were injured. Rumours went round that the killer was an illegal immigrant and a Muslim. It then surfaced that he wasn't. And we had 7 days of mindless rioting. So I guess what I'm asking you first, Chris, because you seem like the borderline pessimist/realist, whereas mashallah tabarakallah, Ben here is much more optimistic.
He's upbeat and ready to go.
The thing is, some of these tensions and frustrations are real, Chris. I can even sense it in some of the way you spoke about some of the aesthetics of the Muslim majority areas. How do we tackle those issues?
And my father said to me, he said, we've lost our identity. I said, Father, we lost that a long time ago. Forget about it. It's gone. In my mind as a Muslim, I don't care which color you are. I don't care about identity. As long as everybody's doing well, we've got a good standard of living. That's great. That's fantastic.
Alhamdulillah.
In terms of what you said with regards to the genuine concerns, I think we all have genuine concerns, regardless of color again.
Agreed.
And our genuine concerns are coming back to the government's failures.
Migration, housing, education, employment.
Socioeconomic circumstances is all affecting and impacting families up and down this country. And the way to solve that is by having better governance. The quality of politicians nowadays is awful. Not everybody, not some great politicians out there, but the quality and standard across the board in general, it seems to be just going down like anything year upon year.
Are you guys concerned about reform and the rise of reform?
I'm concerned about them, but I was listening to LBC the other day, and they were saying that how much do you allow people like reform into the parliamentary system? Do you allow them in and let them have a voice, or do you exclude them? Because if you exclude them, they're going to say, "See, look,
Yeah.
So how much do you allow them into the political scene? Reform. I would love to have a sit-down conversation with people like Farage, because I'm confused with his stance sometimes. 1 minute it's Muslims are a fifth column, and he hates people of different colors, and the next minute it's meritocracy. I want to be in a country that is all about whoever's got the best IQ and the best skills. We want them. I don't care about color. But I wonder if he'd ever stepped into a mosque. I wonder if he'd actually sat down and watched Muslims pray and not have a problem with it in the streets. I wonder if he has these problems with... I wonder if he's even had mutton and rice from Jamaicans. I love this stuff. I can't get enough of it. But I wonder how actually integrated he is with multicultural Britain. They have genuine concerns, but their concerns are geared to the wrong people in some senses, although I think reform is probably trying to target the government a lot more, but for their own interests, because they want to be in power.
I think it still boils down to this whole integration via assimilation issue, because there are certain aspects of British or Western culture which Muslims, whether irrespective of your skin color, you're going to assimilate to.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it. You simply cannot avoid it. Especially if you're a minority, naturally the values and the culture and the ways and the urf of the majority will influence you.
Yeah.
There's no, you can't get away with it. There's certain things you can resist from the standpoint of faith, right? Certain social practices, certain ways in which you build families and have relationships. Those things are very clearly defined in the Quran and Sunnah. There's no budging. But I find that you mentioned Farage, and on the one hand, he's all about meritocracy, the best man for the best job, and care. But it's still grounded on this assumption that you still have to assimilate to a certain set of values of what Britishness means. So if you come to our country, you learn our language. If you don't like alcohol and pork being served in certain places, you have to live with it. Stop making so many requirements for the accommodation of your faith. Just take one for the team and sacrifice. Muslims on certain issues won't do that. They just won't.
But he has to make sacrifices, and he's not willing to.
Yeah, if you want the best man for the best job, and the best man for the best job doesn't drink alcohol or eats pork, you then have to accommodate for the best man for the best job. Or he has to go
and pray at lunchtime.
Exactly. If you want the best man for the best job, and he has those requirements. So I think there's a hypocrisy, and it's rightly...
That's his privileged position as a white politician, and thinks that he's the indigenous population. He thinks they should... sacrifice for us. But like you said, in a meritocracy, you should also sacrifice for the best man for the best job. And and in a multicultural Britain, you're not going to deport everybody that's non-white. It's a ridiculous idea. And some of them have...
But what do you do about the converts, though?
Remigration. I always ask that. So I always say to folk on the right that, look, let's say in an ideal situation, you get every single illegal immigrant outside of this country. Those who came here illegally, those who have overstayed their visa requirements. You get rid of every single soul who should not be here illegally. Boom, out of the country. Let's say you get rid of every single Muslim immigrant who's come here legally. Get out of the country, do one. Now you're left with Muslims that have been born here for generations. Our forefathers have been here since the 60s. Or you're left with around 110,000 white Muslim converts. What do you do with them?
Do you know who has the answer to that?
Who?
Baroness Saida Vorsi.
What's she saying?
I spoke to her the other week, and she said that you would also be deported. Do you know why? Because our loyalty is questioned. Coming back from the time of the Ottomans, we spoke about Abdullah William Quilliam. His loyalty was questioned because his loyalty was to the Ottoman Sultan.
He was Shaykh al-Islam al-Britannia.
Yes. So our loyalty is also questioned, which is why and explains the amount of comments that we get across TikTok and other social media forums when they
British
say,
anymore.
you're traitors, you're not white anymore. Believe it or not, I never heard that one before. You're not white anymore, you're traitors, you get out.
Ethno-nationalists basically said that our white tribesmen who have converted to Islam will be dealt with as people who have got mental health issues.
Yeah.
So you guys will be seen as people that can never be trusted.
Yep.
A subversive community within a community, basically like how the Moriscos were treated after the Inquisition. So the Moriscos were like the descendants of Muslims, who had basically renounced their faith, and even they weren't trusted. The Moriscos
In southern Spain.
in southern Spain, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, look, how much has all of the stuff that we've discussed up until this point influenced your lot's brand? Why did you guys...
Interesting.
So the two British Muslim gentlemen dressed in suits, undeniably white. How much of what we've discussed influenced that brand? Were these considerations taken in when you guys came together?
Look, like it all started off us taking advantage of multicultural Britain and going to an Arabic coffee shop. People being fascinated that, mashallah, the old bean can speak Arabic, and then I'm just this bean.
Bubbly bee.
Bubbly bee. And, you know, they say, and you know what it's like in, like, you know, our coffee shops, you know, like all the tables that seem to be close together, and like when the sun's out, you know, they're all outside and everything. Yeah. And people are talking without the beer. People were just so fascinated and wanted to know our opinions on things. I was like, why do you want to know our opinion? And they were like, well, you like Arabs, you like Muslims, you're Muslim, but you're British. Like, you haven't got a little bit of Turkish in you, you haven't got a long lost Pakistani uncle or anything like that. You're British, you're native Brits, but you're Muslims. What's your opinion on this? So I said to him, shall we do a podcast? Shall we get a mic? And he was like, no. Then I convinced him.
Were you guys wearing suits at the time?
No.
I was smart cash. You know, turtleneck blazer.
I'd gone back to uni, so I was wearing the North Face jackets and that sort of thing. Yeah, I kind of ditched my shirts for a bit, but they've come back now, especially for Perry. Shout out to them. Yeah. And then I was just like, well, you know, I think people would find it interesting if we spoke about issues, but didn't tell people that we were Muslims, and do a podcast that didn't do very well, did it?
Its infancy.
And then we that sort of gained a bit of traction.
It was political.
Yeah, and then I said some weird stuff about...
But most of your content is very soft and friendly.
Yeah, so
the transition that he's talking about is we went from political. Somebody said to us one day, he said, why are you doing this? What's the aim? We didn't really have an answer.
Your mission should be dawah, like show what Islam is, teach Islam, teach the people. So then we sort of said, okay, the suits started to come in a little bit. Arabic.
I value your lot's political takes. I personally do. It means a lot. Because I want to know what my white brothers are thinking. Guys who are indigenous to this
But we're
land.
very... you know what I find is we're very different to the Muslim convert, or let's say the British guy that embraces Islam, but then dresses in a thobe, grows a long beard.
You're even different to that.
You know, and we spoke to a couple on Coventry Road in Birmingham the other day.
The flex, you guys give me more of a kind of Murabitun feeling from Norwich, because I went to university in UEA Norwich, yeah. So your Sheikh Bewley and these guys and the Murabitun brothers, you give me more of that energy. Because when I went to university and I wasn't practicing at the time, and I visited them, they were mashallah very smartly dressed, very well kept. You know, mashallah, very well groomed, and vast majority were converts, white Norfolk folk, you know, from the Shires, and that was the first time I kind of experienced what Muslim white gentlemen look like before you guys. So that's the more the energy you give me. Then the white convo became a Salafi Hyde Park Speaker's Corner.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, we
Did you just listen to our brothers? Did you just he go list?
I didn't hear that.
It's just when you say the speaker's corner that always gets me.
Or like, you know, the typical big bearded ginger guy who became a Muslim. You know?
Yeah.
Hamza's den.
So
Yeah.
basically, our work or our content online is not only to show non-Muslims that you can be a Muslim and not have to change your ethnicity,
You
but
can
also
still-
for people that embrace Islam, you don't have to change your cultural identity as well. Because I don't want to see our poor David embracing Islam, going home and saying my name's now Abdul, and his mum's like, what? Because that destroys relationships.
Even though you're known as Chris and Ben, am I correct saying you do have a Muslim name that you've given yourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah? But you go with Chris and Ben, which is also absolutely legit, right?
Yeah, it helps on social media.
Sure.
We get into certain places, don't we?
Yeah.
And but look, someone like Hamza's Den, you know, if you ask me, he's still quintessential British in a very working class way.
I think
He's a football casual, isn't he?
Yeah.
I've heard
he's very
him
much
say.
like you.
Wait,
Yeah, similar energies.
yeah.
Similar
But
energies.
the only thing that I would say, I mean, his knowledge on many issues.
I'll tell you that he is someone who's, I can find a white non-Muslim version of Hamza
Yeah.
that gives the same
Yeah.
energy, speaks the same way, has the same dress code about him.
But he's not stood in a shalwar kameez and then having curry for lunch.
Yes,
Whereas some people would
do that. Yeah, I don't think that even that's necessary. I think it's cringe sometimes.
Yeah,
Look, if I said to you, let's go for a Sunday roast, you wouldn't go, no, would you?
No, of course
No.
not. I'd smash that Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd smash
Actually,
it.
a Kurdish. We've signed a contract. Or we haven't signed it yet, but we've got a contract with a barber. It's after his 5 years of free haircuts.
Well, hang on a minute, he's Egyptian.
Oh yeah, but I wanted to get to.
They all look the same, this guy.
My barber was
His
Kurd.
barber was a Kurd. That's why I say that.
Yeah.
But I posed the question. We actually recorded a short Chris and Ben film. We've got Chris and Ben Films YouTube where we do little 15-minute films. So do go and subscribe to
Yeah,
that.
make sure you shout us out, dude. It helps.
Chris and Ben Films.
Yes.
And Chris and Ben,
UK.
Yeah, we've got two.
So anyway, but so we did a film in this Arabian barbers, and the barber that was cutting his hair, I said to him, I've got a question for you. You're Kurd. He said, yes. I said, what's your most favourite food from British culture? He said, oh, brother, Sunday roast. Without any kind of
Hesitation or anything.
Sunday roast.
He's ready for this question.
And I thought,
Mine's is steak and kidney pie, by the way.
Really?
I do like it. Yeah.
I'm more of a pie man than a roast.
Yeah.
I love my pastries and pies. Bangers and
You've made me
You
so
should check
happy.
out Have a Pie.
yeah.
Yeah, have a pie from Yorkshire.
I love it.
And
So without hesitation, and then I asked my Egyptian barber, "Oh, what do you like about English food?" His brother, no English. So, but then the Kurd was telling him, "Say English breakfast, English breakfast." And I thought, boy, I was thinking, goodness, where has he tried a Sunday roast, and where has he tried an English breakfast? And obviously, we have to have good thoughts of our Muslim brothers and sisters. Hasna dhan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not necessarily talking about him, but somebody, let's say person X,
Yeah.
the only place really could try that is if they assimilate it.
Yeah.
And
Go and
they-
eat that food.
Yeah.
I love my English food. I think there's certain dishes which are very quintessential, very very unique, and no one else can even try it.
Well, you're Bengali, right?
Yep.
We've never tried Bengali food.
I mean, if you've been to an Indian restaurant, the vast majority of the chefs are Sinati Bengali. So the vast majority of Indian restaurants are actually Bangladeshi.
Oh,
owned.
right.
So if you've been to an Indian restaurant, you've tried a Bengali curry.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I've had a medhi.
A medhi.
Yeah.
What's that, bruv? that sounds like something.
You sound like the guy that rings up the table. Can I have a chicken boona?
Methi.
You're going to say it in their accent.
You know what? I learned how to say.
Mehdi, that's
Oh,
what
I
it's
thought I learned how to say "I love you" in Bengali.
Say it.
Well, I was saying it wrong for about
I'm not
2
going to
years.
say it now. What did you think you were saying?
Yeah, say what you
Alabashi.
thought it was.
Alabashi.
Amituma balobashi. Yeah, so basically that means it's more than it's more I love you, but on a more of a
So what's balabashi then?
Amituma balobashi, which means I really like you. But Amituma balobashi, Amituma bash, it's something that you'd say to a woman.
Oh dear.
Well, so I've been shouting at people when they tell me that they're from Bangladesh. Alabashi. And they've gone...
I'm into my Balobashi, which means that I like you. I very like you.
So I'm saying it correctly.
You got one of the words right. You got one of the words right. It'll
So
do,
halfway there.
It'll do.
1% forward's better than 0% at all.
Will do. Bringing the podcast to a close. We've spoken about a lot of things. I don't think we've merely scratched the surface. Culture, identity, values, overlaps, similarities, differences, race, ethnicity, culture. In the last hour and a half a bit, we've touched upon all of those things. What's next? What have you guys got in the pipeline? Chris?
Like I said, our national campaign to make Muslim areas great again. You know,
We want to make Britain great again.
Well, Britain was never great.
Well, we want to...
We were discussing this. When was Britain great again? And I came up with, now is the best time.
Yeah.
That you've never had it any better.
The peak
You're
of
nev-
empire.
Yes, you're living better now than King Henry VIII.
Yeah.
You're living better now than Queen Victoria in some senses.
So Christopher's saying now is Great Britain.
Not peak of empire.
No.
No.
That's what most would say. Peak of
Yeah,
empire.
because they're wrong.
Okay.
I mean, could we lead the movement of, what is it in America, the manga movement? The mega movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, make
Make Britain great.
How often do you guys mix with other white convert Muslims? So, for example, who are from different leanings and different
I had
ways?
to meet one after this.
Huh?
Yeah, we're about to meet a Cockney convert after this.
How'd you find Robert? My colleague Robert. How'd you find Robert?
I really like Robert. When he was doing his original, before he came to you guys, 5 Pillars, he interviewed me for his convert series.
Yeah.
But when I was like rediscovering my faith, like I was saying to him, he's a traitor. And I brought it up and I said, look, this was the comment that I made. And I actually replied to myself saying, look, I'm Muslim again. But he said to me, do your research. And I would say this to anybody, have a bit of curiosity and use your noggin a little bit. And like say, okay, if the media is saying all this, why aren't all Muslims doing it? And also remember, what soap, coffee, mocha, Yemen and all that sort of stuff. Research, like learn about that. Don't want to go too much into detail.
So what's
about that,
next
but-
for us?
Yeah,
is that we don't want to go on the mosque circuit.
No.
That's been my...
we want to be on the
that's been my
BBC,
golden rule.
Channel 4.
You've been missed.
I don't want to go and preach to converted. I want to go and to preach to the people that think that Muslims are the enemy. I want to be mainstream. And also, we did do a series, Chris and Ben's Tip Top Tour. We recorded it in Egypt. And I think the guy's going to send us around the world in our suits.
Wicked.
Then I would love one of them. I think one of them, it's not going to be the next one, but one of them's going to be in Texas. And we're going to go around Texas in our suits.
Can you imagine that?
I'm going to
It'd be powerful.
ask a redneck where the local mosque is. You know, like this. I need to go and pray. Can you show me?
I genuinely believe you both have created something very unique. Honestly. Wallahi, I'm being honest. I'll accept your efforts and make you successful in your endeavours because it's very catchy to the eye. I think those with an ounce of rationality or know-how know exactly what you guys are doing. It works. Is there anything as my brothers that we could be doing better at 5 Pillars? Tell me.
I'll be honest. I think I'd lay off the sort of the tweets of like attacking, and make it sort of like invite for tea, invite people to talk instead of like, this, he's, because it, I don't know about you, but like, if you take a step back and you see like these Twitter fights and everything, you just think, what is going off here?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it does, our image any
I think more the face-to-face conversation, like you've been doing, Jade and Francis.
What do you guys think of my engagement? So become less confrontational.
Yes.
Do you accept that we're in a confrontational arena?
Yeah, I do. But what puts out fire? Well, it depends on what kind of fire. Yes.
Water.
And
so become more water.
Yeah. And I think what you do...
You want to water us down, do you? Is that what the agenda is, eh? No, it's just
Yeah, but it's like a genuine. I mean this from the heart, and we were talking about you yesterday with a dear brother who wants to be remembered to you. By the way,
What?
I've forgotten it. I don't know how to pronounce his name wrong.
I don't know who you're talking about.
We did okay with Mehdi and Bashi.
Majid
Waris.
Majid Waris. He wants to be remembered to you, and like, he's you two have got the same similar vibe. Like nice, natural, welcoming sort of thing. And the interviews that I've watched with him was Piers Morgan. I was telling you when we were texting, like how you dealt with Piers Morgan. I wanted to like shake your hand from my phone because you weren't attacking him. You were sort of going, well, okay, well, where's the proof then? And obviously he couldn't give it. And like, because you were delivering like a calm approach and like you're sort of representing the Muslims and you're not coming on screaming and dancing at him like you're wrong, but there's a way to deal with the confrontation.
Right time and place for it.
Exactly.
That's on the battlefield.
Yeah.
My engagements with the far right, should they continue? Or
Yes,
should I stop?
absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Love it.
you have to do
Love
it there.
Because what I see it is that, look, man,
Jazakallahu khairan for that.
let's have a chinwag. Let's find out what the crux of the issue is. For some of them, it's demographic shifts. For others, it's cultural encroachment. For others, it's concern to do with migration and immigration. For others, to do
You
with
can
grooming.
change the minds of millions across the world because of these conversations, because Muslims are going to watch them, and also non-Muslims will want to find out about Jaden and her likes and see what she's saying.
Chris, Ben, it was an absolute honour.
No, the honour's ours.
Honour's ours, brother.
Trust me.
Barakallahu feek, may Allah
Really
reward
good
you in
conversation.
abundance.
Jamal, how long was it?
2 hours and 2 minutes.
2 hours and 2 minutes.
Just went away for 10 minutes.
That's a decent duration. I thoroughly enjoyed that, my dear brothers, and I genuinely hope and pray that in your endeavours, Allah accepts it, Allah increases it for the benefit of Islam and Muslims and non-Muslims alike, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys got in the pipeline. Jazakallah khair.
Likewise, thank you so much. Pleasure.
My dear brothers and sisters and friends, I hope you all thoroughly enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you tuned in via YouTube, do remember to click subscribe, check out Chris and Ben and all their content on TikTok and YouTube, Chris and Ben Films and all the other platforms. And if you're tuning in via all the audio platforms, do remember that you can find this episode and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.